Hey everybody, it's Tom Cherryums with the FujiNet project, and I wanted to show a video of something that I whipped up really quickly while I was a bit stuck on doing things for the end device. I kind of pieced together in my head rather quickly how to take and make it possible to run a BBS underneath CP/M. Now, when I first started running bulletin board systems with my father in the early 1980s, the first implementation of NAC attack that we actually ran under CP/M, and it ran in a very novel way, and a lot of the individual boards that were available for CP/M ran in a very unique way. That is, they had the primary bulletin board program itself, which just read and write to the console. They didn't have any special modem routines at all, but rather relied on a special program called bye.com, that is BYE.com, to both handle hanging up as well as initializing the modem and redirecting the input and output from the console out to the modem whenever a connection was actually active. Now with FujiNet, this is actually kind of interesting because we don't have to emulate a whole modem. We don't have to do all of the crazy tricks that bye.com had to do in order to function. What we can instead do is implement a series of BDOS calls and actually take and do things like check to see if a TCP connection is available, create server connections, listening connections, accept those connections, drop those connections, and to have that work entirely on the BDOS side of things under run CP/M, and not have to complicate the bye program with all of that functionality. We just take and do the appropriate calls at the appropriate time. And it does seem to work, as you'll see right here. Now what we have right here is a copy of our CP/M installation, and on drive A, we actually have a copy of the Microsoft Basic Compiler with its runtime, and a copy of RBBS 4.0, courtesy of Jason Scott's excellent BBS documentary repository at software.bbsdocumentary.com. Thank you so much, Jason Scott, for this and its existence. And hopefully with what I'm about to show you, we are showing a possible way to run these bulletin board systems and to be able to see them, to be able to run them in their original form by providing a new bilayer that can talk to TCP/IP directly. And with that, we'll go ahead and start. Now, the board that I'm using here in question is RBBS version 4.0. And we can see it right here, for example. If we take a look, we can see RBBS 4.0, and it's a basic program. It's actually a very large basic program. Well, it turns out we can take and compile that. And if we look at the installation routines, actually I don't have anything on drive B here, but I do have my notes. I will take and pull them up over here on the side so we can see what we're doing. And we will do this. Let's see here. One moment. So I will open up the documentation here. One moment. We will go ahead and compile this as is using the basic compiler. Now, the invocation that I'm using here is the typical way that you would trigger the basic compiler. The file on the left is the destination file, which is a relocatable object, and the file on the right is the source file. We don't have to put extenders, but we do want to go ahead and put some switches on the end so that we exit automatically. For basic compiler, we just do /x. And within a few moments, it will take and trigger the basic compiler and compile the RBBS source code. And after we're done here, we see that there are no fatal errors, and it will have created the relative object file that we need to link. No problem. Now all we need to do is invoke the linker, which is L80, and give it the destination COM file and the relative source file. We also want to specify that we want to look for all the libraries and things that we need in the same directory, and we want to exit the linker once we're done. Within a few moments, it takes and links everything together. And within a few moments, we'll have our COM file. We see right here, the data and code segments are spit out, and will returned back to the CCP once we're done. Now we need to actually do the same thing again, because if we actually take a look, there are two basic programs. The first is the RBBS, BBS itself, and the utility package that we want to use. We actually need to do the same thing again to compile the utility package. We see here no fatal errors, and we continue with the same process here as before. And we link. We see our resulting code and data segments. Then within a few moments, we'll have our COM file. Now if we look, we find our two COM files ready to go. Now since these are compiled basic, we also need to make sure that the runtime, brun.com, is also present. So now that this is actually done, we can actually take and move on to the next bit here. The documentation as it comes basically gives you some setup instructions on how to set up some files, PWDS. We won't have any of that set up, but there is enough here so that we can actually take and set up by and to call it. Now, the by utility that I have currently right here expects the BBS program as bbs.com, so we just need to rename as bbs.com. So there it is, ready to go. And the only thing that we need to do two things. The first, we need to take and set up a listening port. And we're going to use a utility that I've written here. It's going to be a part of the FujiNet CPM tools repository called listen. Listen takes one parameter, which is the port that we're going to listen in on. And it does a little BDOS call, which sets up the TCP server connection so that you can connect to it. Now that we've done that, now we can run by. And again, the by program is special to FujiNet here, And instead of dealing with a modem, what it's dealing with are the TCP connections, and we've exposed them as BDOS calls here, making this BY program really, really simple. So now with that, we can go over here to Altera, and I can dial in to my FujiNet. And just like that, it works after it loads the BBS into place. 1, 2, 3. Come on. There we go. And there we go. So there we go. Enter password. And there we go. It's not exactly perfect, and I don't have any of the text files in place here, so this is rather empty, but it's here, and it works. Not much to do except just goodbye for right now. Yes, I'll leave some comments here. And there we go. Now once it's done, RBBS calls BY.com again, and BY, of course, hangs up the connection, and we sit waiting for another connection. More to come, but I wanted to show you guys where it was at this particular point. This was roughly about half a day's worth of work to get this working, but kind of shows the possibilities here. So until next time, guys, have fun.